Welcome to Africa Thursday on the World Today here on Channels Television. I am Amarachi Ubani. We begin today's program in Malawi, where unfortunately a minister, Godfrey Kamanya, apparently killed himself, not being able to wait for the final results of the country's general elections, which held on Tuesday. Police say they found the minister in his home after he shot himself. But his spokesperson has denied reports that his suicide was linked to him apparently losing his parliamentary seat. Official results have not yet been declared in what is expected to be a tight presidential race. But reports say that Mr. Kamanya left a suicide note at his home in the capital, Lilongwe, asking President Joyce Banda to take care of his daughter and provide for her education. President Joyce Banda says Malawi's elections have been marred by some serious irregularities, including vote rigging. She called for an immediate manual audit of the results. Mrs. Banda faced a strong challenge in Tuesday's election from three other presidential candidates, including ex-Foreign Minister Peter Mutharika. Earlier, election officials said the electronic counting system had broken down in some areas. Voting spilled into a second day at 13 voting stations, and thousands queued to cast their ballots. In some places, reports say voting boxes or lids did not arrive, so officials used buckets and plastic wraps. Around 7.5 million people were eligible to vote in the fifth elections since the end of one-party rule 20 years ago.
Problems in the southern region, as you know. I understand there are no problems in the rest of the country. I don't know why there are problems in the southern region. I hope that the Legal Commission will correct whatever irregularities that exist so that we have a fair voting system.
As intense fighting continues in Mali, Tuareg rebels say they've defeated the country's army in the battle for the control of the key northern town of Kidal. A rebel spokesperson said several government soldiers were killed or captured. The government admitted its troops had retreated, and the president called for an immediate ceasefire. Fighting first broke out on Saturday when Mali's Prime Minister Moussa Mara visited Kidal to show support for government forces based there. The renewed fighting threatens to end efforts to revive peace talks with the rebels who belong to the National Movement for the Liberation of Azawad, the MNLA for short. The group is fighting for the independence of northern Mali. Well, South Sudan will receive over $600 million from donors, including the US and the UK. A sum raised at a conference in Norway will go a long way towards the target of $1.8 million the UN says it needs to help millions facing starvation. UN humanitarian chief Valerie Amos says it is still possible to prevent a famine in the conflict-torn country. More than 1 million people have fled their homes since fighting erupted in December last year. South Sudan's main Western sponsors, Britain, Norway and the United States, on Tuesday pledged millions to help with urgent humanitarian needs resulting from fighting in South Sudan.
Was the scene of
UN officials said they needed $1.8 billion in aid of $1.3 billion.
Individuals of certain identity.
Donors, including the United States, Britain and Norway, agreed to give more than $600 million on top of the $536 million already pledged. The conference delegates were told that millions of people in South Sudan will be on the edge of starvation by the end of the year as fighting rages on in the world's newest country. Clashes between rebels and government forces have wrecked food markets and forced people to abandon their livestock and land. Violence erupted in the oil-producing country in December 2013 following a long past struggle between President Salva Kiir and his sacked deputy, Riek Machar. Thousands have died in the increasingly ethnic violence, often pitting Kiir's Dinka people against Machar's Nuer. The two men, under regional and Western pressure to end the conflict, signed a ceasefire earlier this month, which quickly broke down. The violence has disrupted planting of sorghum, maize and groundnuts and forced herders to abandon their animals or lead them to areas with poor grazing. The United Nations Humanitarian Coordinator in South Sudan, Toby Lanza, predicted that the situation would get worse.
The scale is huge. I think that what we're facing at the moment is that by December of this year, 1 in 2 citizens in South Sudan, that's over 6 million people, will either have been displaced, be starving, or be dead.
South Sudan became independent from Sudan in 2011. The world's newest country becoming the world's poorest and most deprived. The Nigerian military says it is stepping up the fight against terror in the northeast. Chief of Defense Staff Air Chief Marshal Alex Bade made this known today during a visit to the scene of the twin bomb explosions in Jos, the Plateau State capital. He told traders to avoid putting their goods on the street as it may make it easier for terrorists to strike. He expressed pain and sadness over the incident, but assured that the government will triumph over terror. He also visited the hospital where the wounded are being treated, as well as the governor's office. His visit comes shortly after that of the Inspector General of Police, who had explained that the police has begun investigations into the bombing. Over 118 people are believed to have died in the twin explosions, but the police authorities have put the death toll at 75.
It's moving out of the northeast because of the pressure the military is putting on them in the northeast. So it is no longer a very safe haven for them to operate, and they are moving to other softer targets. That is what is happening, and we will follow them. They are very cowardly too because they are going after very, very soft targets. Coming to the market to come and kill people who live day by day. The poorest of the poor in the society, you come and kill them. What they are trying to do is just intimidate us, okay? But you know that terror will not deter us from being Nigerians. We will continue to do what we are doing. We will continue to live our life. Terror will not succeed. The security agencies in Nigeria are doing so much that if we tell you the number of arrests and the number of things that we thought, you will only be scared, okay? And as I told people yesterday, we have been catching these people. But you know that in a game of football, no matter how many goals a goalkeeper catches, nobody will remember. It is that one goal that has been scored that people will not forget. That's exactly what has happened here.
When we come back after the break on The World Today, we'll be looking at other stories making headlines around the world. The making of a coup in Thailand as the army reveals it's taken over the government. Please join us again. Welcome back. Thailand's army has revealed its true motive behind Tuesday's declaration of martial law in the country. The army chief has announced that the military is now taking control of government and has suspended the constitution. In a televised statement, Army Chief General Prayuth Chan-o-cha vowed to restore order and enact political reforms. The cabinet is also being told to report to the military. TV broadcasting is suspended and political gatherings are banned. A nationwide curfew is also in place. The coup follows months of political turmoil in the country.
Thailand's Army Chief, General Prayuth Chan-o-cha, took control of the government in a coup on Thursday, saying the army had to restore order and push through reforms 2 days after he declared martial law. Prayuth made the announcement in a television broadcast after he held a meeting with all rival factions aimed at finding a solution to 6 months of anti-government protests. The broadcast came shortly after soldiers took the leader of the anti-government protest, Suthep Tongsuban, out of the meeting that was aimed at finding a solution to a drawn-out past struggle that has polarized the country and battered its economy. Prayuth added that international relations will remain as they are. For the ambassadors, consulates and international organizations, including foreigners living in the Kingdom of Thailand, the Peace Maintaining Committee will protect you, and I insist that the international relations with other countries and organizations remain as usual. The crisis is the latest installment in a long battle between supporters of ousted former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra and opponents backed by the royalist establishment. The army declared martial law on Tuesday, saying the measure was necessary to prevent violence, but it rejected accusations the measure amounted to a coup.
Stopping protests. Since November, nearly 30 people have been killed in demonstrations.
Well, our colleague at the Voice of America, Steve Herman, is still in Bangkok. He explains in details what the coup means for Thailand's polity and the people's reaction to the army's move.
Now, there has been a coup in Thailand, and the military, along with the police, according to the Army Chief, are in charge. The Army Chief, Prayut Chan-o-cha, appeared on television at exactly 5 o'clock this afternoon and said, in the matter of national security, that it was imperative for the military and police to take over the running of the government in the kingdom. Now, this came as leaders of the major political parties, the rival protest movements, and the election commissioner were all meeting for a second day at the Army Club. They had been called there by General Prayut to work out a solution to this persistent political impasse we've been having in the country. And apparently, we don't have exact details yet. There was some sort of exchange, and the general informed those present that if they couldn't work things out immediately, then he was taking over the country. So there's been a coup essentially. This is the 12th successful coup in Thailand. There have been 18 coup attempts since 1932. Some other ominous developments. All of the television and radio channels in the country have ceased broadcasting under orders by the military. They have been told that they can only retransmit the statements that are being made by the Army. Channel 5 is the Army channel, so that's the only channel now broadcasting, and radio and television streams over the internet from Thai channels have also apparently ceased. There is a curfew in effect from 10 p.m. through 5 a.m. So life in Thailand, which has gone on fairly normally through this protracted period of 6 months of protests and a couple of days of martial law, has now been changed dramatically by the orders of Thailand's Army Chief. For Channels TV, I'm Steve Herman, VOA News in Bangkok.
Oh, thanks a lot, Steve. He'll be on the ground, of course, in Bangkok, monitoring the situation in Thailand. The crisis in Ukraine is far from over. A deadly attack on troops in the eastern region of Donetsk has left 14 soldiers dead. The Defense Ministry confirmed that heavily armed terrorists attacked a checkpoint in the Volodymyr area, killing or wounding a number of soldiers. Attacks come just 3 days before Ukraine's presidential election. Ukraine's interim Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk has called for an emergency session of the UN Security Council, saying he has evidence of Russian involvement in the violence.
Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council Secretary Andrei Parubi confirmed in Kiev on Thursday that a number of soldiers had been killed in eastern Ukraine in an overnight attack. Security forces said the main clash took place about 20 kilometers south of the industrial hub of Donetsk, which is now in the hands of the separatists, who say they will disrupt the elections. Meanwhile, a cafe owner in the eastern Ukrainian town of Slavyansk surveys the damage to her business after artillery fire rained down on the town overnight. Just a day after a moderate exchange of fire between Ukrainian soldiers and pro-Russian separatists on the outskirts of the city, shooting intensified on Thursday. A number of houses and businesses were damaged after the overnight shooting. Ukrainian security forces and the pro-Moscow separatists have clashed repeatedly in recent weeks in eastern Ukraine, where the breakdown of security has rattled